Hi there. In this presentation, we're going to do a full overview of how covert agents infiltrate the internet to manipulate, deceive, and destroy reputations. So we'll be going over an in-depth series of top secret documents that were leaked by Edward Snowden that expose the training programs for these covert agents that come from a branch of GCHQ, known as the Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group, or JTRIG. These tactics are being used in full force all over the internet and also in controlled social manipulation operations such as protests, varying forms of activism, and control over mainstream media propaganda. So we're creating this presentation as a public service to help others understand the tactics that are being used against common people and businesses on the internet. Chances are you've had one or more of these tactics used on you, or you've been targeted by one of these covert agents. This is deep psychological warfare at its core. While some of the information revealed in this presentation might be upsetting to you, it's also to help individuals gain clarity around these twisted tactics. This is the truth that we're presenting here, and the truth can not only set you free, but can help you to restore your sanity. So we're doing this presentation in two parts. In part one, which is this part, we will go over the training documents and the tactics of the GCHQ JTRIG that are leaked by Edward Snowden. And we've analyzed these documents and we've created reference points for each tactic used. In the second part, coming up after this one, we'll be using our own personal experience of being targeted by these covert agents to show real-life examples of how this plays out and what this looks like. We've been heavily targeted and trolled for the last 5 years due to our line of work, and we've been monitoring everything that's been done to us over this time. We thought that providing names and examples of the targeting tactics used against us would be a great way that we can take something that was intended for bad or to harm people and to turn it into a teaching mechanism to help others identify and recover from such attacks that are aimed at them through these covert programs. So before we begin, let's just go ahead and introduce who we are so you know who it is that's giving you this information. So let me introduce my husband, Tivon. Tivon Rivers is an engineer and an inventor with a background as a trained technician in the U.S. Navy with over 16 years experience working on IT.
And this is Naima Feagin, my wife, also known as the pen name HopeGirl online. She holds a master's degree in business administration with over 10 years experience in project management and government and corporate finance.
So together we are the husband and wife team and co-founders of the Fix the World organization based out of Morocco, where we've spent the last few years developing technology solutions around energy, health, and wellness. Together with my parents, we work as a family of one particular invention, which is a Tesla-inspired electrical generator for off-grid living. This project is what has made our entire family a target for these covert programs. So we're also co-authors of the book Forbidden Tech,
Yes.
which we have right here, and we'll be reading something out of the book today as well. This book is the culmination of experiences and research in the field of technology that we've been involved in and all the politics that go along with it. We cover a wide array of inventions in this book that are considered disruptive to the energy industry, and we've also included sections on taboo or controversial topics such as gang stalking, electronic harassment, V2K, COINTELPRO, JTRIG, GCHQ, chemtrails and geoengineering, 9/11 technology such as 5G and energy weapons, just to name a few. There's a lot of stuff in this book. So let's go ahead and start with some definitions before we go through these slides one by one.
Yes, yeah.
We're doing this kind of just in case you're like me, these are not common household terms. A lot of acronyms are being used in these slides. These are like government, military types of slides and training programs. So what these slides are, by the way, these are the actual slides that were leaked by Edward Snowden. And these slides were put together for a presentation for a cyber spy conference. So it was all top secret, and then Edward Snowden took them from the NSA, and they were published by mainstream media, NBC, I believe it was, in 2014. So this is the real deal information. This is the background information. So when we identify people as being trolls or GCHQ, this is our research and information that shows to back up those claims as to why we're saying these things about certain tactics that we see online. So GCHQ, that stands for Government Communication Headquarters. It's an intelligence agency and security organization responsible for providing signals intelligence, SIGINT, I guess is that the right way to say that?
Yeah.
SIGINT, and information assistance to the government and armed forces of the United Kingdom. So GCHQ is like the UK version of CIA.
Yeah.
Right? And
or NSA.
NSA, sorry. They work together, but this is for the UK. And JTRIG, Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group, is a unit of the Government Communications Headquarters, GCHQ. So it's part of it. The British Intelligence Agency, the existence of JTRIG was revealed as part of the global surveillance disclosures in documents leaked by the former National Security Agency contractor, Edward Snowden. Now here is the mission of JTRIG, and this was gleaned from their documents. Want to read the mission?
Yeah, the scope of the JTRIG mission statement includes using dirty tricks to destroy, deny, degrade, and disrupt enemies by discrediting them, planting misinformation, shutting down their communications, known as effects operations. The work of JTRIG had become a major part of GCHQ's operation by 2010.
So again, like I said, the slides that we'll be showing in this presentation come from several different training manual documents that were leaked by Edward Snowden. These slides come from the presentations prepped in 2010 and 2012 for NSA cyber spy conferences. These documents were taken by Edward Snowden from the NSA and were then given to NBC News, where they were first published in February of 2014. The reason why we're doing this presentation so in depth is because a lot of this information that was on the internet has been removed. I was looking through it, and a lot of the PDF links for these documents has been removed from the internet. In addition to, most of the coverage that was out there about this information came from InfoWars.
Yeah.
And as we know, InfoWars just had like all of their stuff removed from the internet as far as the major platforms and Google and everything else. So all those videos that were educating people about some of these topics have been deleted from the internet, and that's why we're creating this new presentation to really put it out there as a public service. Let's go ahead and start with the slides. So these first few slides are from one of the documents, and then we go into another bunch of slides from another document, and we put them all together in this one series of slides that you can actually download from the link in this video, so you can look at them yourself and look them over. So the first slide is the cyber offensive session, pushing the boundaries and actions against hacktivism. So it's just sort of like a title slide. Again, here's the thing that we're going to do with this video. We don't have any kind of notes. Normally, if you put together a PowerPoint presentation, right, you would go and you would have notes. There would be a speaker presenting the presentation, and the slides are just for show behind the presentation. We don't have those notes from that keynote speaker. All we have are these slides. So what we're going to do is just kind of look through each one of them and say, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Because that's all we have is just trying to decipher what's going on.
Yes.
So in that first slide, they talked about hacktivism. I've been looking up some definitions just to help everybody follow along. to make sure that we all have a clear understanding of what all of these things actually mean. So the definition of hacktivism is an internet hacktivism spelled differently, is a portmanteau or hack of activism, is the subversive use of computers and computer networks to promote a political agenda for a social change. Okay?
Yeah.
So that comes from Techopedia, by the way. And here's some more information on hacktivism from the Techopedia website.
Okay, hacktivism is the act of hacking a website or computer network in an effort to convey a social or political message. The person who carries out the act of hacktivism is known as a hacktivist. In contrast to a malicious hacker who hacks a computer with the intent to steal private information or cause other harm, hacktivists engage in similar forms of disruptive activities to highlight political or social causes. For the hacktivist, hacktivism is an internet-enabled strategy to exercise civil disobedience. Acts of hacktivism may include website defacement, denials of service attack or DOS, redirects, website parodies, information theft, virtual sabotage, and virtual sit-ins.
So now we have more things to look up because I didn't really know what all of those things meant. Website parodies is a spoof website. It's a site that uses dishonest designs to trick users into thinking that it represents some other uninvolved party. This term can refer to a site that is a parody or satire, although this use is less common. So we've seen a bunch of those, haven't we?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Another term that I wasn't familiar with is called a virtual sit-in. A virtual sit-in is the form of electronic civil disobedience, deriving its name from the sit-ins popular during the civil rights movement of the 1960s. The virtual sit-in attempts to recreate that same action digitally using a distributed denial of service attack, DDoS. During a virtual sit-in, hundreds of activists attempt to access a target website simultaneously and repetitively. If performed correctly, this will cause the target website to run slowly or even collapse entirely, preventing anyone from accessing it.
Yeah.
So it's barraging someone with a whole bunch of just, like people just sitting on your lawn and cluttering up the whole place, right?
Now, how can that manifest online? That could be if you have like your own membership site and people have to log in.
Mm-hmm.
You might have thousands of people or bots nowadays trying to log in at the same time.
Yeah, we've had this happen to us with our attacks being brute force attacks, virtual sit-ins. Also, I think that it happens online. As far as flooding the internet with bad information,
yes.
All those pieces of bad information would be like virtual sit-ins. A great example would be YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So if you have a team of trolls out there that are pounding out video after video after video, like a dozen videos of false information for every one video of real information that you put out, that ratio is going to really mess up your real content because all of their fake videos are going to be cluttering up everything in the SEO results.
Yeah.
So that's like another idea of a virtual sit-in. And in these slides, so we'll go to the next slide, the effects at the top of this slide, effects definition, this is what GCHQ calls their programs. They're putting them into the effects programs. They're aimed at tracking targets, spreading information, and manipulating online debates and statistics. So let's read through this slide.
Yeah, using online techniques to make something happen in the real or cyber world. Now there are two broad categories. One is information ops, or influence or disruption, and the other is technical disruption.
This is known in GCHQ as online covert action. And here's the 4 Ds that they line out. Deny, disrupt, degrade, deceive. I actually want to unpack those. I want to read the definitions of what those words mean so that we can get an idea as to what it is that they're doing to people, to average citizens online. This is what they're intending to do. To deny, the definition, a state that one refuses to admit the truth or existence of, refuse to give something requested or desired to someone. So if you are a business and you have an innovative new product and maybe you need a little bit of credit or legitimacy saying this is a good product and it works, they will do all these things to deny
or deny or ignore
the truth or the existence of something that's positive.
Yeah.
That's one way of doing it, right? Disrupt. The definition is to interrupt an event, activity, or process by causing a disturbance or problem, to drastically alter or destroy the structure of. So, just to be a troublemaker.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. We see a lot of that stuff, right? Which leads us, it's also distraction. People call it distraction. Disrupt is the same tactic, right? Degrade. Treat or regard someone with contempt or disrespect. And to break down or deteriorate. Most of these tactics do just that, these trolling tactics.
Yes, yeah.
They're very degrading, right? And deceive is to deliberately cause someone to believe something that is not true, especially for personal gain of a thing, give someone a mistaken impression, or fail to admit to oneself that something is true. Now, this next term has become kind of infamous since these documents came out, and it's the honey trap. But we do want to define it here anyway. What's a honey trap?
Well, this is under discredit a target.
Okay.
So these are the methods that you would discredit a target. The first one is setting up a honey trap. In a honey trap, an identified target is lured to go somewhere on the internet or a physical location to be met by a friendly face with the aim to discredit them. A honey trap is described as very successful when it works. Now, the disclosures also reveal the technique of credential harvesting, in which journalists could be used to disseminate information and identify non-British journalists who, once manipulated, could give information to the intended target of a secret campaign, perhaps providing access during an interview. It is unknown whether the journalists would be aware that they were being manipulated.
Now, this definition I got from some of my research that comes from people that have been studying this information. So a honey trap is more than just a sexual advance. Of course, it has sexual advances as part of its strategy to try to catch somebody and blackmail them and stuff. But honey trap goes a little bit further than that, especially here where it talks about journalists are being used to disseminate information and identify people. So it's all a bunch of information gathering, and unfortunately, it's not just anonymous profiles, it's real people posing as, quote unquote journalists to try to get into your project, get into your business of some kind, and gather information from you so that they can then turn over that information to whatever
at a later date
agency or whoever they're waiting for. Sometimes they'll gather that information for years and then go through a debriefing where they turn over their computer or something and say, here's all my information I gathered. Part of the honey trap process is called credential harvesting. Okay, when you look into the honey trap process, you'll find this term credential harvesting. It's also called account harvesting, and this is what we were just talking about. It refers to the attacking technique or activities of grabbing legitimate user IDs and even passwords to gain access to target systems for illegal or malicious purposes. It can also happen outside of a computer system. Okay, so it's just trying to get into your account in one way or the other, or get into your life, get into your business so that they can create havoc. So here where it says change their photos on social networking sites, that's another way of saying sock puppet accounts. Okay, and so what's a sock puppet account?
So sock puppet accounts is an online identity used for purposes of deception. The term, a reference to the manipulation of a simple hand puppet made from a SOC, usually referred to a false identity assumed by a member of an internet community who spoke to or about themselves while pretending to be another person. And we see this all over the internet.
Hundreds of sock puppet accounts coming at you at the same time. These sock puppet accounts, they also do something called mass reporting, where they'll have like 25 different profiles, different sock puppet accounts, and they'll all report you to some third party, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, or there's a bunch of different ways. We've seen them take down crowdfunding campaigns and things like Patreon accounts and GoFundMe's and Indiegogo campaigns. They'll have sock puppets come, and 25, 30, 40 sock puppets will all report the same thing so that it looks like there's a huge bunch of people against you.
Yes.
So that's part of the social networking sites and different photos.
Yes.
Oh, here's one.
Write a blog purporting to be one of their victims.
Okay, this is known as fake victims blogs or fake victim posts or crisis actors.
Yes.
It turned into crisis actors. You have to remember this information was from several years ago. So that's what you see a lot of fake victims these days.
Yes,
People
you do.
that get up there and they start crying, or they make a whole blog. The other thing that you see are these sites that they're pretending to be victims, and they're like support network sites. We've seen some of these like other sexual abuse victims where they'll say, come here to get a help and give your testimony. But unfortunately, it's a site set up as a trap to lure victims in so they can receive more abuse. It's really sick how that happens, but that's something that actually occurs. So you've got these fake victim sites that are set up as magnets to lure in victims to abuse them even further. It's part of the program. Pretending to be a victim of a target in order to disseminate false information and influence people in a negative way to act against the target. That's the purpose of the fake victims blog. I mean, if I accused you of something and I'm your victim, right? Everybody would be influenced to take my side over you.
Yes.
And that's a whole thing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And also, the last one here.
Email, text, their colleagues, neighbors, friends, etc. Again, the context of that email or text would be something to discredit the target.
Now, another way of saying this, there's an actual term, it's called poison pen letters. Poison pen letters is a letter or note containing unpleasant, abusive, or malicious statements or accusations about the recipient of a third party. It's usually sent anonymously. In the term poison pen, the word poison is used figuratively rather than literally. Poison pen letters are usually composed and sent to upset the recipient. They differ from blackmail, which is intended to obtain something from the recipient. In contrast, poison pen letters are purely malicious. In the United Kingdom, Section 1 of the Malicious Communications Act 1988, it covers most cases of poison pen letters.
So the next slide we have is discredit a company. So now we're getting into e-commerce.
One thing is to leak confidential information to companies, the press, via blogs, etc. That's what it says right here. So that's kind of straightforward that, yeah, leak confidential information, but what if you don't have confidential information about a company? Because most companies keep their information private, right? Yeah. Not everybody has all your accounting documents, for example. Only the people that need to have them have them. But that's one area that they like to make stuff up.
Yeah, that's right.
So what I've seen is they'll leak confidential financial information. They will make up financial information because it's confidential. Like, oh, they make this much in sales, or this is how much money they have, right? They'll make up a figure, and then they'll start posting comments with, I mean, we've got all that with us. We've got these people with little charts and these tallies of how much money they think that we raised or whatever. They'll just make it up, and that's one of the tactics. Now, posting negative information on appropriate forums.
And this goes one step further. And many forums have been created solely as traps to lure business and innovations just to discredit them now. One of the major areas in our research in the field that we work in is alternative energy. I mean, anything from solar to wind to some of the more exotic stuff. And there are quite a few forums out there. Well, it looks like over the past decade or so, these forums have started to take on this characteristic where new members come onto the forum, they'll share what they're working on, and you can look at the forums. Some of these forums are free to the public. You can look at the thread, and it starts off as the first 2-3 pages, this person is sharing what they have, and they're looking for constructive criticism to improve on whatever effect they found or whatever contraption that they're working on. And what later on, shortly after, there tend to be, I would say, are gatekeepers or people who've always been monitoring that thread. They start to say that the work is invalid, it doesn't work, and then if the person that came up with the idea or discovery continues in the thread, then they start getting, they start receiving insults and things that question their integrity, their intelligence. And a lot of the forums, unfortunately, nowadays are taking on this form where there are quite a few sock puppet accounts in these forums, and that's the thread. So if you start off on the third page of the thread, it seems to be kind of on the up and up. But if you fast forward to like the 200th page, it ends up in, the person wants to leave the forum, and the people who created the insult are the only ones left standing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Let's go to the next one, which is to stop deals and ruin business relationships. Well, yes, that's pretty straightforward, but how do we see this being done? Well, one thing that this does is it creates something with SEO, as search engine optimization, so that if somebody's typing you or your company into a search engine like Google, what comes up on the first page? That's what we mean by SEO. So when they do these tactics, they will create all these different websites and all these links and all of these things just to rank them on a Google search, so that if somebody types in your name or your company's name, the first thing they get on that first page is a whole bunch of bad, false accusations from all these sock puppet accounts, right?
Yes, that's right.
And fake websites and victim websites. So that in and of itself, if you're trying to promote a new business or a new product, that will definitely ruin your business relationships or stop deals. That's one way that they do it, is by flooding and tarnishing your reputation online via SEO.
Yeah, that's right.
This next section really gets into the psychology that they are training everyone for at GCHQ. The Art of Deception by GCHQ. No longer top secret. First slide here, just a cover slide, but it says Human Science Operations Cell. So I looked up the definition of human science, just so we know what it is. It's a branch of study which deals with people or their actions, including the social sciences and the humanities, as contrasted with the natural sciences or physical sciences. Now, before we go too much further, I wanted to just take a brief moment to mention here, throughout the rest of these slides, you're going to see this theme of magic. They use magic as a theme, or illusion. So the definition of magic, just so we've got this fresh in our minds, is the power of apparently influencing events by using mysterious or supernatural forces. And illusion is another part of it. An instance of a wrong or misinterpreted perception of sensory experience. And the definition of a conjurer, because they use these words as well, is one that practices magic arts, a wizard, and also one that performs feats of sleight of hand and illusion, magician or juggler. So the concepts of magic, illusion, masking, mimicking, and conjuring used throughout these slides are the same tactics that are used by the occult. Yeah. In part 2 of this presentation, we'll be using real examples where we'll show the links between these tactics of how GCHQ is using or hiring members of the dark occult to carry out its operations. So that's part 2, but for now, let's go through the rest of these slides and you'll see these words coming up. So this slide here, just another cover slide, but it has online HUMINT, strategic influence, disruption, and CNA. HUMINT, I didn't know what that stands for, but it stands for what?
Human intelligence.
Human intelligence. So it's frequently abbreviated HUMINT and sometimes pronounced as HUMINT, as intelligence gathered by means of interpersonal contact, as opposed to the more technical intelligence gathering disciplines such as signals intelligence, which is SIGINT, imagery intelligence, IMINT, and measurements and intelligence media, MASINT. So the two things here that is really focusing on is HUMINT, which is using people to gather information in various ways through people, and SIGINT, which is using signals data or blocking, interfering with communication signals to gather information.
Yes.
So these two are used together, and you'll see them on the slide. Before we go further, we just want to talk about these two things, HUMINT and SIGINT, in these terms, because in our book here, we have a whole section that we wrote on the history of COINTELPRO. So this is all linked together. COINTELPRO came out of the Cold War. It came out of the CIA's program for MK Ultra, mind control. So why don't we just have Tivon read that first paragraph there.
Okay. As mentioned earlier, the original COINTEL program started in the 1950s as an obscure branch of the CIA's MK Ultra mind control project group during the Cold War. A time when the United States and its allies were in conflict with Russia. COINTELPRO was a counterintelligence program. It was a series of covert and at times illegal projects conducted by the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, of the FBI, which was aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting domestic political organizations. One can immediately see the similarities to modern-day gang stalking tactics.
So let's define what gang stalking is, because we also have a whole section in our book about gang stalking, and unfortunately we have personal experience with gang stalking as well. Gang stalking is also known as cause stalking, organized vigilante stalking, stalking by proxy, community-based harassment, and covert war. These are basically harassment and discrediting campaigns waged against the victim, also known as the targeted individual, or TI for short. The program is a modern embodiment of COINTELPRO Stasi tactics that were used by the FBI in the United States during the 1950s and 60s, and is also known as COINTELPRO 2.0. Neighbors and coworkers are often recruited to participate. Other recruits tend to come from extremist groups, witch covens, secret societies, public servants, and satanic cults. It is an operation comprised of rogue factions within society, private security firms, and or organized criminal mafias that have access to both private and government resources. The purpose of such a program is to frame, isolate, and destroy an individual financially, socially, and professionally via slander, frame-ups for non-existent criminal activities, online harassment, and following the target everywhere he/she goes. Targets are whistleblowers, Good Samaritans, minorities, artists, activists, and any other from different groups of people who have been labeled as a domestic threat. The person under surveillance are followed and harassed by civilian groups who have been hired by private security companies who either direct or under contract have classified security access within law enforcement, intelligence, or ex-military intelligence. In addition, covert federal agencies are granted large budgets with unknown agendas. So we bring this up because it links in to this. It's part of the tactics that they use. Not everything is online.
Yeah,
okay?
That's right, yeah.
Some of it starts online, but it very quickly goes into real life.
People on the ground. Conducting these tactics.
Somebody right outside your door in your neighborhood, that sort of thing. So what we want to do is go through a couple of people that they refer to also in this presentation. On slide number 19, the title of which is Magicians, the Military, and Intelligence, they have three different people, Jean Robert Houdin, Jasper Maskelyne, and John Mulholland. I want to focus on John Mulholland. These are all magicians, but John Mulholland was one of the more recent ones, and he actually was not just a magician, but he was an intelligence agent, and he worked for the CIA. During the Cold War, Mulholland was paid by the CIA to write a manual on deception and misdirection. Copies of the document were believed to have been destroyed in 1973. However, copies later resurfaced and were published as the official CIA manual of trickery and deception. So I tried to look up that manual, go check that out. And I didn't read the whole thing because it's kind of intense, but I did skim through it and I found some interesting stuff that I just want to pull up here. But you can find that manual right here on Amazon. So I went and I was reading through this manual and I found this excerpt because basically it is giving the background, the history behind what was going on with this. So just to kind of lead up to, before we read this excerpt of what they're talking about, is that during the Cold War and the MK Ultra program, one thing that they use in the MK Ultra program is drugs. They drug people to get them to do things, or for all manner of reasons, they drug their targets. One of the problems they were having was trying to figure out how to administer these drugs to unsuspecting victims or targets. So they hired John Mulholland to teach them how to trick people into taking drugs. How to slip drugs in their drink and things like that. So that's the lead up to this excerpt I'm going to read right here. From the earliest days of MK Ultra, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb recognized that CIA's drugs and chemicals, regardless of their ultimate purpose, would be operationally useless unless field officers and agents could covertly administer them. During the same month, MK Ultra was authorized, April 1953. Gottlieb contacted John Mulholland, then 55 years old and one of America's most respected magicians. Mulholland was an expert in sleight of hand, or close-up magic, a style of conjuring that appeals to Gottlieb because it was performed only a few feet from the audience. 38. Further, sleight of hand illusions require no elaborate props for support. If Mulholland could deceive a suspecting audience who was studying his every move in close proximity, it should be possible to use similar tricks for secretly administering a pill or potion to an unsuspecting target. To do so, CIA field officers would need to be taught to perform their own tricks, and John Mulholland, the author of several books about performing magic, appeared to be the ideal instructor. When approached, Mulholland soon agreed to develop a spy manual for Gottlieb describing the various aspects of the magician's art, which might be useful in covert operations. The instructions would provide information enabling a field case officer to develop the skills to surreptitiously place a pill or other substance in drink or food to be consumed by a target. Mulholland accepted $3,000 to write the manual, and the CIA approved the expense as MK Ultra Subproject Number 4 on May 4th, 1953. So there's your reference. This is who this guy is, where he comes from, and he's one of these heroes depicted in these slides. So you see how it's all connected.
Wow.
What's amazing to me when I found that is because a lot of the content that these trolling groups are using, it's all like it goes into MK Ultra. It goes
very quickly.
Very quickly.
There
it's
isn't
like,
that many layers.
Yeah, it's like the work we do has nothing to do
Yes.
with MK Ultra, but for some reason, the same people that are always talking about MK Ultra are the ones that are trolling us. You know?
Got it.
And the occult, same thing.
Same
the occult stuff, it's the same ones. So this is answering a lot of questions as to why.
Yes, gotcha.
So another person I want to highlight here is they use another magician towards the end of their slides. Someone by the name of Raymond Joseph Teller. Okay, so he's a modern magician. He's on the last slide saying conjuring with information. So I looked up Teller because I'm trying to figure out who these people are that they're presenting this with. He's an American magician, illusionist, writer, actor, painter, and film director. He's best known for half of the comedy magic duo Penn and Teller, along with Penn Jillette. Teller usually does not speak during performances. He is an atheist, a debunker, and a skeptic.
Seems like perfect breeding ground for trolls.
Okay, and a fellow of the Cato Institute, a free market libertarian think tank that also lists Gillette as a fellow. So, I don't know anything about Teller. However, I am finding a thread. Okay,
Yes.
the atheism is a thread.
Yes.
And you'll see why, because you know who else is proclaims to be an atheist is George Soros, who has funded most of these groups that are doing this stuff, or a lot of these groups.
Yes.
We'll get into him in a bit. But, so Telos is an atheist. Now, the reason why that's important is because in these psychological slides, you will see that they're using people's religion
Yes.
and their beliefs
Yeah.
against them. And the people that are like warring against this are these atheists and these skeptics. We've got those two groups after us.
But with what you just said about the background of these characters, they're also into magic and the occult. So
Yes.
they actually do have a belief system.
And that's the thing. In our own personal interactions with people, and we've had a lot of interactions with people, people who claim to be atheists are never actually really atheists.
No.
Most of them are involved in the occult in some way,
Yeah.
you know, or they're the evolution kind of scientist, you know, that sort of thing. But a lot of them are involved in the occult, because people who are involved in the occult, they don't walk around saying, I'm in the occult, I'm a Satanist, I'm this, I'm that. They don't say that.
Yes.
What they say is, I'm an atheist. I know a handful of Satanists that I can name off the top of my head right now. Every one of them claims to be an atheist. So it's what they do. They lie. They're lying.
Or the illusion. It's the illusion.
The illusion and the lie. You know, it even says in the Bible that Satan is the father of lies. So that's what we're dealing with here, and that's one of the threads that we've seen. Let's dig into the psychology. If you are somebody who has been through some basic psychology courses, you might recognize some of these terms. If you've never been through psychology courses, this is all news to you, right?
News to me.
Okay, it's news to you. I've been through some psychology courses. It was one of my requirements in my degrees that I've got. It's also part of marketing as well. You have to understand human psychology for marketing and things like that. So that's why when I'm looking through these slides, I was like, they are completely mapping out people and their behaviors. They have a name and a label for every kind of thought that you think and every action you take, every emotion you have. They have a predicted pattern. Like, if we do this to someone, most of the time they'll end up reacting in this way. So it is complete psychology, and it's mapping people out. Now, I personally really don't, this is really evil to me, to treat people like that. This program and the people that are at the top of carrying it out, they are a giant team of psychologists.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say sociopaths.
Well, sociopaths as well, but they're psychologists, especially because this is coming from the UK. And the UK, I mean, of course, there's psychologists all over the world.
Yes.
But the UK has, well, tell us about it.
Well, I mean, from my career, when I was working in IT, I was surprised by the number of psychologists that were working in these technical fields. I mean, that was their primary degree. They weren't technicians primarily.
They were psychologists.
So I thought that was very unusual for me to see a high number of people who are trained psychologists by default. And this program is all about psychology and manipulating people.
Yeah, pretty much. So these two slides here, the first one, it just shows how, well, I'm just explaining what I see. What do you see? You see different like areas.
Well, areas also, you know, it's interesting. They got these characters all color coded with lines drawn between them to try to illustrate some level of interaction. So clearly, you can see you can create a database based on this high level concept here. You know, they're breaking down each individual by, looks like, at least 7 areas. The anthropology, psychology, economics, biology, political science, history, and sociology.
Right, so they're basically grouping them, and then if you go to the next slide, you see how they add a layer on top
Yes.
of those areas. So let's just read some of the things out here. Around sociology, you've got ethnography again, culture, deception, magic, influence, personality, trust, elicitation, belief, and religion. Those really pop out to me because you better believe they use your religion or your beliefs against you wherever
Yes.
they can. Neuroscience, evolution biology, global trends, key leader engagement, social networks, and obedience and compliance. So this is all just grouping and mapping people and human behavior so that they can be manipulated. Okay, once again, another cover slide, and just, categorizing what they're going to talk about next maybe.
Yes. That's
But you see SIGINT in there, and we already defined what that is.
Yeah.
So it's definitely part HUMINT and SIGINT for gathering intelligence. So here's all these magic themes that are coming in. They say, we want to build cyber magicians.
And it's the kind of thing you probably have as a promotional board to try to get young recruits
Yep.
into the program.
Trying to make it look real sexy, right?
Yeah.
And like James Bond-like, right? Another cover page,
Yes.
online covert action. Okay, now these next slides, they're building something here. So this is the first one that they're going to layer on top of this, and then they're going to layer on top of that, and it's going to get very, very busy.
Yes.
So the way we can go through this, and just on your own, look at these slides and say, what are they doing here?
Mm-hmm.
So I see 3 columns. I see human influences and disruption and CNA. This is like their categories of sorts, right?
Right.
And then it says magic techniques and experiment below that. And they've grouped things into individual, group, global, and then psychology, deception, performance, media, and then professionalism, elegance, creativity, and intuition. On the next slide, they've layered on top of that a whole bunch of stuff. So we won't go over every single one of them, but I looked through these things and I started pulling out some terms that I wasn't really quite familiar with, and just doing some simple Google searches on these terms, and every single one of these things brought me back to psychology.
Yes.
So this is like Psychology 101, mapping people out. So let's pull some of these terms out, and I'll tell you what the definitions are. Right here in the middle column, halfway down, it says Hofstede dimensions. I'd never heard of that before, so I went and I looked it up. This is Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory. It's a framework for cross-cultural communication developed by Gerf Hofstede. It describes the effects of a society's culture on the values of its members and how these values relate to behavior using a structure derived from factor analysis. So it's culturally studying humans' behavior across cultures,
Yes.
right? For the most part. Then I looked up another term on here, the herding. And when I see herding, I was like, well, herd mentality, social proof, herding, etc. That's listed on the column on the left, down underneath group. Herding, the herd mentality, and herd behavior, also lesser known as gang mentality, has been prevalent descriptions for human behavior since people began to form tribes, migrate in groups, and perform cooperative marketing and agricultural functions. It's group mind, mob behavior. Social proof, also known as informational social influence, is a psychological and social phenomenon where people assume the actions of others in an attempt to reflect correct behavior in a given situation. So it's considered prominent in ambiguous social situations where people are unable to determine the appropriate mode of behavior, and is driven by assumption that the surrounding people possess more knowledge about the current situation. So they're mapping things out so that they can try this stimulating thing to see what somebody's reaction is going to be, right? Now this one was really interesting to me because something that we're being called all the time is a scammer. right? So there's 12 principles of scams.
But it's 10 principles.
I'm sorry, 10 principles of scams. That's in the middle column, right underneath deception. So I typed in 10 principles of scams. I couldn't find 10 principles, but I found this article that showed 7 principles. And then when I started looking at the different principles, like one of them is distraction, one of them is social compliance, one of them is the herd principle.
Oh, it's right there.
Dishonesty, right? Then I was like, oh, that looks familiar. I remember this slide down here. So if you go down to slide number 30, the title on the top is 10 Principles for Influence.
Yeah.
Okay? So here's the 10 principles of a scam. Time principle, deception principle, the dishonesty principle, the social compliance authority principle, the need and greed principle, the herd principle, the consistency principle, the distraction principle, the reciprocity principle, and the flattery principle. So in this article that I found here, of course we'll link to it, there's distraction, right? So this is people that are who are putting on scams and they're trying to scam somebody, right?
Yes.
These are the principles that the scammers will use.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how they have the scammer principles in there, because they're deceiving. They're the ones that are lying. They're the ones that are trying
Well,
to
it's
harm
almost like
people.
we're looking at examples of projection.
Projection, absolutely. So distraction, like the 3-card Monty, sometimes called Find the Lady, the card system, like, find the walnut underneath the cup or whatever.
Yeah.
There's actually pictures of this in there, but that's the distraction principle, how to scam somebody by distracting them. Social compliance or social compliance authority principle. It's a classic study showing how compliant we are, especially when told to do things by an authority figure, carried out by, well, this one here says Stanley Milgram, but, you should report that to the police, and we've seen a lot of that. They try to act like an authority figure to make us comply. Like I'm gonna report you,
Right.
and those types of things. So, fear-based tactics, herd principle. We just went through that. The herd mentality, right? So that's on there as well. Dishonesty. Fear is the mind killer. Hustlers know that people are fearful and play on this fact. Some cons involve selling goods to markets that are used for illegal purposes. So just, dishonesty is the mind killer. Fear is the mind killer. Just make people afraid. That's one way of scamming someone.
Well,
right?
that's probably I think that's a very effective tool.
Yeah.
Also.
Deception. People are easily tricked even when they think they're being careful. Hustlers take advantage of the fact that most people go along with their expectations. Okay, need and greed. Need and greed principle. Once hustlers know that what people want, even if it doesn't exist, they're in a position to manipulate them. They will play on people's desperation, right, or on their greed.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Now, it's interesting because the reference, we're taking this off a particular blog that happens to parallel the principles, the 10 principles in this J-Trig presentation, but it's spoken in the form of hustlers are doing this. So.
And this comes from the UK.
Yeah.
This blog post comes from the UK, where most of this information is coming out of the UK, because that's kind of like the center for this kind of stuff. Yes, it's in America. It's a different flavor in America, but America is getting it from the UK.
Yeah.
So, at least from our observations. So in the middle section there, it says right next to 10 principles of scams is hindsight bias, confirmation bias, anchoring, and priming. So I just looked up those. Hindsight bias is a term used in psychology to explain the tendency of people to overestimate their ability to have predicted an outcome that would not possibly have been predicted. I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I told you it was going to happen, right? Confirmation bias is also called confirmation bias or my side bias. It's the tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs or hypothesis. It's a type of cognitive bias and a systematic error of inductive reasoning. People display this bias when they gather or remember information selectively, or when they interpret it in a biased way. Well, I don't remember it the way that you're remembering it. Here's another one, anchoring. Anchoring or focalism is a cognitive bias for an individual to rely too heavily on an initial piece of information offered, known as the anchor, when making decisions. And we've seen a lot of this in politics recently, haven't we? Where they'll put out one false dossier or one false report, and then they'll pin everything around that one anchor piece of information.
That's inherently not true.
Right. So if that one anchor point is not true,
then the whole
thing's a house of cards, right?
That's right.
So,
yes.
And priming. Priming is a technique whereby exposure to one stimulus influences a response to a subsequent stimulus without conscious guidance or intention. For example, the word nurse is recognized more quickly following the word doctor than following the word bread. Priming can be perceptual, semantic, or conceptual. Research, however, has yet to firmly establish the duration, a day, a week, of priming effects. So there's another word for that we hear used a lot, which is grooming. Okay, so you're grooming somebody. You're getting them ready. You're trying to get them to a point where they'll start doing things that you
want them to do.
Right? Self-presentation, or right underneath performance, in cyber context. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And I looked it up, and you know what I found was a whole bunch of articles talking, it's a psychology thing, because it's a new psychology thing, talking about how people will present themselves in a very different way on a social media platform than how they really are. Like you'll see it on Facebook, right? And there's all these articles that are studying why people present themselves very differently in social media outlets or in cyber context than they would in real life. And there's like this whole area of study behind that. Now you see the next slide. They layer one more thing on top of this, and they put all these little blue clouds with other things on there. So you see that this is a pretty intense map of how they're studying people and trying to categorize and group people and group their behaviors in different ways. So let's go to the next slide. This is the human science learning path. So just again, we see, different things around human science, online human intelligence, the influence, disruption, right? Next slide. That's an interesting picture.
Yeah, so what you're looking at is an inflatable. This was during World War II. I believe it was World War II. And this is when the Allies were on the front, were putting these inflatable tanks and other inflatables to make it look like the assault, the attacking force was larger than what it really was. So
like bluffing.
So if you're like a German bomber, you're looking at it from the sky, you're seeing all these tanks on the horizon, you think, oh my God.
Right.
But they're just inflatables, and again, it's just an example of a well thought out illusion.
Again, here's your magic card trick or dirty tricks, magicians with cards. This slide we already discussed earlier, talking about their different heroes, all these magicians. Here's one, mimicking, inventing, decoying, dazzling, repackaging, masking. It says dissimulation, hide the real at the top, and simulation, show the false. So it's all like, I keep thinking of your classic example of a magician on a stage who's doing something off to the side, but he puts the pretty assistant, the pretty sexy woman assistant out in the front, so everybody looks at her and doesn't pay attention to what he's doing over here.
Yeah, that's right.
I just think of that kind of concept here. It's just look at what we're showing you and don't pay attention to what we're not saying. We've seen that, right?
Yeah. When it's information that's being relayed, the dissimulation, hide the real would be omission, what you don't say.
Absolutely. The psychological building blocks of deception. First, you get their attention. You understand what their perception is. There's sense making. It's a sense making thing that goes on. You have expectancies. What are their expectancies around it? What are their behavior, and what is the effect? So once again, just another way to map it all out. And here's a very interesting map showing how they use all different kinds of platforms in order to employ these tactics.
And you see these different platforms, ideally, especially with the scandals we've heard around membership, subscriber data being taken by millions of customers, profiles being taken out of Facebook and Google Mail and all the major platforms to go to who knows what.
Not to mention the GDPR regulations and why those have come into effect was around people's information on these platforms.
Around that in response to it. But the point is, it's in the hands of bad actors, some of which probably government-funded actors, contractors, and any other criminal organization that can exploit this information. For those people, ideally you want to have a database that was able to correlate all this information. So this particular infographic is kind of valuable because it's basically showing the different platforms and how they are kind of mapped on this image. And yeah, you'd like to have all this data on a centralized database so that you can actually start to drill down to a particular target and see what their interests are.
I look at that, I see a picture of a moth and a picture of a building in camouflage. But it says attention management. So that's an interesting way of wording it.
Yes.
You're a manager over what somebody else is paying attention to.
Yes, that's right.
So we just talked about this as far as magicians and some of their tactics to, which cup is the ball underneath, right? Now, I gotta be honest with you. This is the only slide that stumps me. I have no idea what this duck is supposed to be doing.
They're sure you know what this is.
Well, I figured you would help because I can't.
Okay.
Is it a decoy?
No, it's just it's one of these images that you can see at least in two different ways.
Okay.
It looks like a duck with the mouth open, or it looks like a hare with the nose on the right and the ears on the left.
Okay, obviously I didn't see it.
Well,
It looks like a hare or it looks like a duck. Okay, depends on your perception.
On your perception.
Okay, got it.
Perception management.
Perception management.
And if you're someone in authority and you said that's a duck.
That's a duck. Everybody's going to see what you want them to see.
It's a duck.
It's a duck. It's not a hare. It's a duck. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, expectancies. Okay, back to the duck, right? We look where we expect something interesting to happen. We are biased to see, hear, feel, smell, taste what we strongly expect to see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. Okay, this slide, let's actually just read through everything that's on here. Okay, the top of the slide says gambits for deception. In the column that says attention, this is what they have listed.
Control attention, conspiracy, expectancies, etc. The big move covers the little move. The target looks where you look. Attention drops at the perceived end. Repetition reduces vigilance.
The next thing is perception. Mask, mimic, eliminate, blend, recreate, imitate. Repackage, invent. Modify old cues, create new cues. Dazzle and decoy. Blur old cues, create alternative cues. Make the cue dynamic and stimulate multiple sensors.
Sense making. Exploit prior beliefs. Present stored fragments. Repetition creates expectancies. Haversack ruse the piece of bad luck. Swap the real for the false and vice versa.
Seen a lot of these things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
we'll be putting reference points on all this stuff so that in our next presentation, I'll say, they're using swap the real for the false and vice versa, that tactic on this page when they do this, right? I'll be able to draw those connections. Next line is affect. Create cognitive stress, create psychological stress, create affective stress, Caldini, and exploit shared affect. And the last column?
Behavior. Simulate the action, simulate the outcome, time shift perceived behavior, divorce behavior from outcome, and channel behavior.
Yeah, gambits for deception. Now this is an interesting slide here because obviously we're going into some political areas, right? So you've got burqas or the full coverings, and there's all kinds of politics that goes behind that. Also, we know that people are using these Muslim outfits, these full covering outfits, to try to sneak past security at airports and stuff like that. There's been news stories about this, right?
Yeah.
So how much of that is planned? Who knows? But it's, you know, they're using people's religion and they're using political things to sway perspective. Strand 2, influence and information operations. Okay, here's the 10 principles for influence that we went through earlier. It's also like the 10 principles for scam. Now, this is interesting because now we're getting into some marketing tactics, right? So obviously this stuff's used in marketing, and all the psychology in marketing, as I mentioned earlier, that when I did some marketing courses in college, they bring you through psychology because there's a lot of psychology that's employed in marketing tactics. So Coca-Cola and Coca-Cola in another language.
Right.
Just, I'm not sure what that must have been for, but they're showing marketing, right?
Yeah.
This one we could really talk about though, okay? Brand can, okay? Now check out what's going on here. We've got the new product adoption. It's like a cycle. They know that at the beginning, it's somebody's trying to get a new product out there, right? Yeah. And the product's like, oof, I'm pathetic. I'm just working out the kinks. They get over some kind of chasm, right? I think I can. And then when like you're at the peak of your product, you're on top of the world. And then after that, it's like smooth sailing. And then, you know, it gets down to the bottom and then he's like, okay, it's a has-been. It's the iPhone #1, you know, version 1 or something like that. So this is definitely something that we've seen, because when we try to launch a new product, they know that we're at this stage at the beginning.
Yes.
And they will come at us full force
at the beginning
to try to like kill the project.
Yes.
In the very beginning, because they know that we haven't, you know, gotten momentum yet.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So they definitely use it.
And I mean, the tactic of trying to stifle innovation or distract someone from finishing their project, or a new company coming up with something new, but being swayed to work on something else. This is being used all over the place.
Yeah,
it's not just us. It's a lot of other companies and people are being affected in areas, especially if they work online with these tactics.
So people make decisions as part of groups, and people make decisions for emotional reasons and not rational ones. And what do we see there? We see an old tape, which nobody uses tapes anymore.
Yes, that's it.
It all went over to CDs, and then from CDs it all went to digital, right? But it has a little heart shape. It's kind of like, remember the mixtapes from the 90s, or you make a mixtape for your friend, right? That is an emotional thing in a society, so that's what I see when I see that picture. Social creativity. Seed, convert, share.
Passion, density, and empowerment.
So, what do you see when you see that?
I'm not sure what to make of this particular slide.
Like spreading a seed.
It looks like it's all coming from convert out to seed and share. The arrows are kind of going either way.
Oh.
I don't think there's a start here. It's just, but yeah, the seed to convert to share, but then the share going back to seeding again.
Yeah, it's like,
so it's like a
you'll
loop.
reseed. It's a loop. I think it's a loop too. So if you plant a seed, you'll convince somebody, you'll convert that person, and then that person will share what you planted, and then that'll be a new seed. So it's how it influences society.
Yes, I mean, but what's interesting is like techniques like this one has always been used
Mm-hmm.
in just social circles and communities. That's how you get new information, new ideas out there.
I mean, some of this stuff could be used for good things, absolutely. It's just the fact that they're studying it to use it for bad things, to harm people,
Yes.
is what really makes me mad.
Yeah.
Right? So, do you love your brand? Not sure what that's about, but, more marketing, cultural differences,
Yes,
right?
that's it.
Now, this is another thing, too. Whole Foods Market, fresh ground buffalo. There's probably a lot of contradictions in there, like, eating buffalo. People might think that it's a really bad thing to eat buffalo because they're endangered at some point, right? So don't eat the buffalo that's endangered.
Mm-hmm.
But Whole Foods kind of has its own little,
Yeah.
air about it because it's this organic. I'm not sure, but, just showing different, like, cultural influences.
Yes.
Whole Foods is a thing. They call it whole paycheck.
Yeah.
Like only privileged
Can afford it.
Can afford it kind of thing. So, okay, there's a flying saucer. Of course they have to bring in UFOs and conspiracy theories because that's a great way to make everybody look crazy, right?
So it's the humor piece, I think, in the convention.
Not sure, but there's more flying saucers. Like there's 3 slides that show like UFO objects. Now, I don't know if these pictures are actually real pictures or they're faked UFO pictures.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows, right? It could be either way. It's just saying, okay, one thing I've always been really frustrated about when it comes to flying saucer pictures is it's never a clear picture. Okay, you got all these HD cameras all over the world, especially on people's phones. You got HD cameras, and you can't take a clear picture. You just got this fuzzy light dot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they're talking about. I don't know. I'm just throwing speculation at this point, but it's in there. Right? So, okay.
Yeah.
Now this looks like
It's like a mimic.
a mimicking, right?
Yeah. And what are you mimicking here? These are examples of mimicking in this slide where you have the old wagon wheel that the pioneers used to use with the carriages, the horse-driven carriages, to go across the country, to colonize new parts of the West, in the Western country, United States. The wagon wheel, but then you have a car where the grill has spokes to emulate an old wagon wheel, although it's not needed for the wheel, for the tire. It's not needed for the tire, but it emulates something that actually had a function in the past. And then this other illustration here, you have a camera, a modern camera, but even a good modern camera has a physical shutter within its lens. Or you can get yourself a smartphone that has a nice little GUI graphic interface that when you press the button to take a photo, a little graphic animation of a shutter click happens on your screen, on your LCD screen. No need for that, it's just graphic pixels, but yeah, same example of mimicry there, I think.
Mimicry, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now check out this next slide. They call it OCEAN, which stands for openness, contentiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. I mean, if they're not labeling people, so these are some of their tactics, obviously. What's the next one say? Now this is interesting to me. This is kind of like that other slide where they were talking about seeding and converting and sharing, because this is kind of similar. It's like liking, certainty, disclosure. When I look at this, I think somebody likes it, there's a likability.
Right.
Then they feel really confident in whatever that is that they're doing or that they're supporting. And then they disclose it. They say, oh, you know what? I have a confession to make. I like watching that person's YouTube videos or something, right?
Okay,
right. That's how I see it.
Yes, yeah.
You have any thoughts?
It's funny because I kind of think of some of the recent where the big YouTube thing is, or online thing is, dealing with disclosure, you know,
Yeah.
like alien disclosure.
Oh,
or
disclosure. Yeah.
some new revelation that's promised to be revealed to the masses. And what's interesting about this particular illustration is it's an infinite loop.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you would think that if it was particular disclosure, once the thing that people are liking and want or certain that's going to happen is disclosed, that would end that cycle. But here we're seeing that it goes back to liking again. So it might just be the promise of disclosure will continue this ball rolling until
Maybe.
what have you. So
Mirroring, accommodation, mimicry. So again, like we've been talking about earlier, look at the question at the bottom. Can I game this? What does that mean to you, gaming something?
Oh, well, it's just these again, a lot of these attributes are things that have been observed in just human psychology.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that people do either, you know, consciously or not. And it just looks like to me in this presentation they're just describing these three techniques or attributes, and the person who's running this slideshow in the conference is posing the question to the audience: can I or can we game this?
Yeah, and you know what? Like, let's just take this middle section here, this accommodation. I'm going to read these things because this is the stuff that I see going on in these little like online forums, online comments sections, online communities, Facebook groups. This kind of thing happens all the time, and this is showing me that they've mapped that out.
Yeah.
And they're like basically they're analyzing a group behavior, they're getting themselves involved, and they're figuring out how they can like manipulate people.
Yes, that's right.
In a situation.
Yes.
So it says accommodation, adjustment of speech patterns and language towards another person in communications. People in conversation tend to converge. Depends on empathy and other personality traits. Possibility of over-accommodation and end up looking condescending. So something else I've seen groups doing is that a lot of these online operations are now, they're coming out from their anonymous profiles and they're doing live calls on YouTube where they all get together and they all have a conversation together. You know, it's all part of this program as far as I'm concerned, to try to figure out how can they game this. It's also to try to give them some more credibility. Yes. Especially if you're just an anonymous.
Well, it's just another layer. You're just taking one layer away from the onion or of separation.
Yeah.
You just put your face up there, but you still have an anonymous profile. People don't know who you are.
Right.
You know, ultimately online.
Yeah, you just have a voice behind. It's like, you know, you're not just typing. Now you're actually speaking, and there's a personality, and you can
That's
hear
right.
you can hear their accents and things like that, right? Well, this is really breaking a person down. Self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, including creative activities, esteem needs, you know, a feeling of accomplishment, belongingness and love needs, safety needs, and physiological needs, food, water, warmth, rest. It's treating
Yes, exactly.
This feels like treating people like cattle.
Yes. Well,
that's how I feel when I look at this slide. That's just my opinion, but right? What do you think?
yes. I mean, this whole presentation is just cold and calculated.
Cold and calculated.
Putting human beings in these different pigeonholes and boxes, and how can you game your target? So again, you have to have a certain sociopathic mindset to want to do this full time. As far as I'm concerned, that's my opinion.
You have to be a special kind of evil. Is what I feel. People are human.
When someone needs food, water, warmth, and rest, and they want to look out for their kids, you know, and they need to pay the bills. It's because it's out of survival. And they want to thrive and have a good life, you know. But yeah, you got people out there that think that they can isolate themselves from this environment that they're trying to gain. And I really do think some of these people who design these models, these infographics and such, don't realize the full implications of the things they're doing. If you try to look at this, for me, if you try to look at this mathematically, there's no way you're going to be able to do the kind of things that they want to do in these little images here and not feel the repercussions of it. Eventually it will come around. So.
Well, while we're on this, you brought up a really good point that people have families and they're trying to survive. This is what really bothers me, because we really have to make a split. The majority of people out there are not doing this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Okay, this
at least
kind
not cautiously,
I mean, some of them are going along with it, and the number of people who are engaging in this kind of activity online is growing, but it's not the majority of people.
Absolutely.
The majority of people are normal people who have been through a lot, because our society is getting harder and harder. They're trying to survive.
Yes. Yeah.
They have families they care about. They have their own problems. They have all different kinds of they're emotional, physical, spiritual beings.
Yes.
Right? And they have their own connection, their own belief systems. That's humanity. That's the essence of a human being. To take somebody and to categorize them into this pyramid shape about, oh, here's their psychological needs, here's their safety needs, how can we manipulate them on all these different points? Because, they go after your kids, they go after your family members.
Right.
It's just, it enrages me.
That's right.
To treat people like cattle in this manner. Oh yeah, who are you? Okay, whatever. Just another slide there. Strand 4. Okay, let's get to this next one. Now, I take this slide. It just has the words block, turn, fix, disrupt, limit, delay. And I typed those terms into a search engine. And I came up with like military defense tactics. So I ran it by Tivon, because he was in the military, and I was like, does this sound like your typical defense strategy, defense operations? So this is where I found, defensive characteristics, to block, to fix, disrupt, limit, delay. It's just ways of handling a situation.
Well, I think what's happened is, for this presentation, as you can see, it's just a block diagram. And probably the presenter is basically distilled things that are taken out of the military arena and put it into a sociological, wargaming, weaponized form, at least through online media. I think that's what we're seeing here.
And I also look at this as when you're trying to get from point A to point B in a process.
Yeah.
And you come up with different obstacles thrown at you.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Like first they'll block you.
Yeah.
Or after that they'll try to turn your attention into something else.
Yeah.
Or they'll fix it so that you'll stop talking about it and you won't make a big deal out of it. Or they disrupt it in some way.
Maybe 3-hour Skype calls. That's a good disruption.
That's 3-hour Skype calls, yeah.
Don't answer those calls. That's the answer.
Or they place limitations on your access to it or something like that. Or delay. Delay's a big one.
Yeah, delay.
How many
Especially if you're relying on them for something.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, here's the other slide, disruption operational playbook. So they're talking about different operations. They mention false flag operations in here, false rescue operations, disruption operations, sting operations, infiltration operations, and ruse operations. So all these tactics, I think they categorize them in an operation. So we've been through these operations. They've been done on us. So it's like, they're in their disruption operation now because we're trying to launch a new product, right? Or we're trying to raise some money for a campaign for something.
Yes,
so they'll put one of these operations on us, and before you know it, we'll be in all these forums, and they'll be like writing all these different smear campaign articles about us, and this one's interesting. Identifying and exploiting fracture points. So more psychology. This is like that groupthink stuff where they're trying to figure out how can you get cliques of people to work together. Now, we've seen a lot of online cults forming, right? Little cult groups that are into certain belief systems, or they all like team up with each other, and they team up against somebody else, and it's all these like us versus them, and the right and the left, and the political structures and stuff, right? So I see this slide representing a lot of that stuff, because look what we've got here. Things that push a group together: shared opposition, shared ideology, common beliefs. Right? And things that pull a group apart: personal power, pre-existing cleavages, competition, ideological differences, and that there's a tension.
This cycle, or this infographic also, it does explain a lot of online communities with a lot of like YouTube videos talking for like 2 hours at a time or what have you.
Yeah.
And in these videos, over time, these groups, they form together with their own personalities, and they
clusters of people,
they cluster,
right?
but then over the course of 2 or 3 years, inevitably they break apart. Over some personal or
there's a falling out.
There's a falling out,
and there's always a falling out with the next falling out, and then after that, it's like, and then the people that all fell out with the same person, all those people get together, and
it's always ends in
dynamics,
emotional turmoil.
Oh yeah, and financial loss.
Yes,
because every time you have a group that breaks up, usually you'll like pool resources in one way or the other, right? So if it's if you're all living together in one house, like a hippie commune, that's one thing. But if you're trying to you have a network, an online network, and everybody runs their own part of the network, and then together you can put information out with some real gusto, right? You have a falling out, and all of a sudden you don't have the same reach, the network's broken, and that always costs money. One way or the other, it's always a financial loss as well. All right, this is a next to last slide for the gambits of deception. This is slide number 52 here. And let's pay attention to this, because these numbers are going to come into play in just a little bit. These are their goals, like their full rollout complete by early 2013. They want 150 plus JTRIG and ops staff fully trained, and then from that, mainstreaming the work, push the reduced level 1 tradecraft to 500 plus GCHQ analysts.
Well, when you say 500 plus, that can be 20,000. Yeah.
Right? And then under that, relentlessly optimize training and tradecraft. So this is what the project manager, the business manager in me sees when I read a statement like that. There's programs called Train the Trainer, right? So you train a team of people that would then go out and multiply that information by training other teams of people. So like the first 150 JTRIGs, ops and staffs that are trained, that's 150 people who would then go out and train a whole group of people underneath each person.
Well, each one might train another 10 or 20 people. 10
or 20, right? So like the next level down would be, they want at least 500 GCHQ analysts. And this is in the beginning. This was years ago. This is when this thing first started, and they were ramping it up.
That's right.
Right? So this was years ago. We had 500 GCHQ analysts working on this, plus. And you say, well, that could be 20,000. We don't know how many, but there's a lot of people. And at the end of it, the goal was to relentlessly optimize, which just bring in more and more and more agents to do this stuff, right? So we're going to revisit this slide in a little bit, because we want to help you guys think about, well, what do we have today? At the making of this video, it's 2018. How many people are on the internet or doing gang stalking or doing operations that are part of this?
Yes.
What's their workforce size?
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot. It's a lot of people.
Well, this is taxpayers' money at the end of the day.
Yep.
The average person, their taxes are going towards these programs to basically degrade, disrupt, and destroy things you're doing online. So.
And before we get to that, we're gonna talk a little bit about paid trolls. So that's basically the end of the slides that were leaked by Edward Snowden that are coming straight from the the training manuals from GCHQ and JTRIG.
Right.
Next, we're going to talk about just some notes that I've made on paid trolls. Okay, so the first thing before we go into this is every single troll that you encounter will lie and tell you that they're not getting paid.
That's right.
They're lying. They get paid. They're going, but every one of them's like, I don't get paid, and they make jokes like, where's my GCHQ paycheck? You know, I've seen that a lot. They'll also tell you that they're not a troll, that they're just, you know, a cranky person that disagrees with you, right? They're lying. And so the reason, why do I know that they're lying? Okay, so I have a couple things that I look at to,
Yeah, there's some indicators.
you know, because there's some people that are just cranky people making stupid comments to hurt other people's feelings, and that's not what we're talking about here. The couple things I look at is the amount of labor that's being put into the negative comment efforts, and asking myself, look, would a normal person do this? Right? So what am I talking about? One example, which we'll go into the next video, is that there is an operation where there is a full blog post that's put out every day. There are 20 comments on each one of those blog posts. It's been going on for 4 years. If you do the math, it's like 1,700 blog posts every single day, 365 days a year. Every one of them has 20 comments. That's like tens of thousands of comments on there.
Yes, yeah.
And that same operation puts out like between 3 and 9 YouTube videos every single day. Okay? The volume of labor that goes into doing something like that, that is not just a cranky person with lots of time on their hands. That is an operation. That is a paid operation.
You mean they're not doing it for free?
No.
Oh.
You don't put that kind of labor into something for free. So we're going to talk about how people get paid. The other thing, though, is that that you want to consider is how they get paid. We're going to show you how you can educate yourself on where it's like, oh yeah, okay. So how do they get paid? They don't get paid. Oh, where's my paycheck? Did it come in the mail? We'll show you how people get paid to do trolling. There's different ways. So there's things like Fiverr gigs, Craigslist, right? Or any kind of freelance writing websites.
Yeah, platform.
That's where you would list your services as a troll, and that's where somebody would go find you to troll.
You might not call yourself a troll. They'll say like independent writer.
We'll get into that.
Right.
We're going to get into that, yeah. And there's also, in addition to that, there's these pockets of virtual assistants that they have, like they're hiring sites for virtual assistants in different countries like the Philippines and areas of India where trolling activities are outsourced. We have an outsourced troll that is in India.
He wears white gloves.
He wears white gloves and makes videos about us all the time.
Pretty funny.
They all speak English and will do whatever you want for money. And like in the Philippines, I didn't know this, but you know they all have college degrees. A lot of them have college degrees. They all speak really good English in the Philippines. I haven't been there. Nothing against Philippines people, right? But actually, this is a good time for us to say the disclaimer before we go on. So I have a disclaimer that I put here because we're going to be showing some examples, and I wrote this disclaimer out. Okay. The following websites are legitimate businesses with good track records that offer valuable services to online businesses and clients. This is by no means a negative review of these companies like Fiverr or the Philippines virtual assistant websites. All this is a demonstration to show that there are services out there that will perform any number of content management tasks for a set price, and it's relatively easy to hire someone to do this sort of work online, all while maintaining your anonymity.
Yes.
So that if that's how you're going to pay an army of trolls, that's how you would do it.
Well, yeah, didn't we saw a show that airs in Canada where it was like basically a TV crew. They go on these investigative things dealing with just small petty crimes and things. And this particular one was dealing with someone who had a Facebook profile, and she was doing all these commercials for her clients. But the thing is that she had to put on a false persona for each one.
Oh, yeah,
Like
yeah,
she
the
said,
fake
"Oh,
reviews.
you know, I'm a medical doctor, and I can tell you that this works.
She was an actress.
Or, I'm a lawyer, and I can tell you this works." And so basically,
Yeah.
she got found out. They're trying to get one of these companies that she was actually having her profile on to remove her or to do other things to remove her from the site, or else, you know, the threat of punitive action. But basically, these companies, it's not. You can't really legally go after the companies because they're just simply providing the platform. Now, if people are providing a service and they're doing it with through anonymity, you know, you're just going to have to handle it that way. But you can't go after companies.
So let me just give you a couple of examples. Here's Fiverr. You might have heard of this site. Fiverr has lots of great people that do wonderful jobs, and if you're running an online business, we use Fiverr for a bunch of different things, and it's been really wonderful, and we've met great people on Fiverr. However, let me show you some of the gigs on Fiverr that could easily be examples for how a troll would get hired.
And this is
right?
how, okay.
I'm not saying these people are trolls, okay? We got all the disclaimers out of the way. You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to show you some examples and give you an idea as to how this could work. Here's a blog post. This is a gig on Fiverr. You can hire this person, and they say, I will write quality blog comments. So you hire somebody to comment on blogs. What if they're troll comments, right? You're still hiring them to do whatever. I will be your ghostwriter. There's lots of comments, blogs, those long-winded articles and things. People will write that for you. There's lots of people that have some good writing skills, and they'll write whatever you want, including a victim blog or a tabloid type fake news blog, things like that. Here's a whole bunch of other gigs listed here on Fiverr. I will do article writing, blog writing, or blog content writing. I'll write you an awesome blog for your brand. So these are all people that will write for you, and they'll write as you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So there's plenty of people to write whatever you want them to write to make a website or a blog or a comment section. Now we're going into forums. These are gigs on Fiverr that have to do with forums. People who say, I will build a community forum website. People who say, I will write 20 posts on your forum.
Yeah.
So what if there's like one of the forums that trolls us, right? And somebody says, here's our new product. And then they hire people to write 20, 30, 40, 50 posts.
Yes.
All negative posts, trashing our new product on a forum.
And all anonymous.
All anonymous, exactly. I will do forum posting, niche, relevant, top quality, and do follow forum backlinks. Okay? Here's some gigs on Fiverr. I will make creative and viral videos for YouTube. I will edit your YouTube videos, right? So you can have people make YouTube videos, because that's a part of trolling. Oh yeah, crazy YouTube videos. I will manage your social media platforms. I will be your social media manager and content designer. Think about all those sock puppets and Facebook accounts, you know, social media, and you're on Twitter and you got somebody running a social, these Twitter accounts keep attacking my Twitter and they keep, you know, trolling me and making up stuff about me. So these are all gigs that you can easily find on Fiverr to pay people to do whatever you want online.
Now, Fiverr, obviously, that's an example. That is a more visible site.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're describing are techniques here. So, for example, it could just be something as simple as checking the classified ads in your newspaper and seeing that there's an opening for a content writer.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking, well, this is a chance for me to maybe do something with my writing. And you go into a dingy warehouse and you find out that the job is you got to sit at a dirty desk for 15 hours a day, 16 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
you know, writing smut or whatever. And again, but the tactics here is what we're kind of showing.
And if you want somebody for just one gig, you can find them on Fiverr. But if you want like more of a long-term assignment, where it's like, I want to hire somebody to manage trolling this particular person, like, you know, there's long-term assignments. They're called
Yes.
they're called virtual assistants.
Yes.
So here's two examples of virtual assistant sites that you can outsource. One's in the Philippines, onlinejobs.ph, and if you look on their site, these are the different kinds of job posts that they have. People who will write for you, people who will create WordPress websites for you, people who will do any kind of project management, be a webmaster, do writing, do marketing and sales, do graphics and multimedia, professional services, social media is a big one. Social media as well. So you can hire somebody to do all this stuff for you. Don't tell me that there's no paid. Please. There's plenty of opportunities, jobs out there for people to do this type of stuff. Here's another site. This is an outsourcing site for virtual assistants called Brickwork India. And here's what they have. Modern technology is helping businesses to work and achieve their goals, so on and so forth. Virtual assistants can be a great asset to any company. It's saying here that they can take care of administrative or repetitive tasks. Virtual assistants can do anything from manage your schedule to organize your emails. Businesses can outsource tasks to virtual assistants in order to get more work done quickly, efficiently, and affordably. Again, I have to say, you could use this as a business owner to run your business.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have used some services like this in the past. We don't use any of them now.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be a really good thing if you need that kind of help.
Yes.
And a lot of these people are great people. However, everything is anonymous. Like, you're not required to say, I had a virtual assistant do that. It's like you can do this anonymously.
Yes, that's right.
You can go on these sites, you can hire these people, you can say, I want you to write smear campaign articles about this person.
Mm-hmm.
It can be done. Now, let's look at Craigslist. What we're going to show you on Craigslist are all of these examples of Craigslist and articles where they were offering to pay people during the 2016 American elections. Right,
Mm-hmm.
to try to sway public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of organizations out there that were led by George Soros and were funded by George Soros.
Yes.
And they were trying to sway the vote from one side to the other. And Craigslist, they started showing up with all of these ads. Come and act like a maniac and protest, and you'll get paid. So here's the actual Craigslist ads that I've collected from another presentation that I did. Here's one. Let's see. Activists and community organizers needed today. Build a living wage movement, fight for economic justice, and empower real families in Ohio with the tools they need to win when it matters most. Organizers start at $12.25 an hour. Okay,
But it sounds great.
That sounds good, but they get better. Protesters needed for political event, $15 an hour in California, right? This one says we need people to protest. Listen here, I'll let you read this out loud.
Okay.
Because this is interesting. Make it a little bit bigger so you can see it.
All right. This is good. Okay.
This is from the Craigslist ad.
We need people to pretend to be angry and bitter and unemployed. You got to pretend to be unemployed. and poorly educated Trump supporters to go yell and interrupt Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton rallies. Previous incarceration is not a problem.
It's preferred.
It's preferred. Must have skills for this gig. Ability to yell loudly and obnoxiously, low self-esteem, propensity to violence, proficiency with curse. Well, you got to be good at cursing. Ignorance of basic hygiene preferred. The dirtier the better. Send a swimsuit photo, your resume, or your police rap sheet to email. Anything goes. All right. We are in no way affiliated with Roger Stone, I don't know this guy's, or any other Trump lickspittle or crony, we swear. Okay. Wow.
That was a Craigslist ad.
That was a Craigslist. Oh, that's amazing.
Okay.
$15 an hour.
$15 an hour for that one. Writers needed to post right-wing comments. Okay, so here's online trolling for Craigslist. Post right-wing comments to social media and news outlets, or a social media company working for a political organization hired to help balance the left-wing bias of the major media outlets by applying a team of writers who will post to newspaper comments, media forums, Facebook pages, etc. And this goes on. So they're advertising to hire trolls.
Going through these examples, I can see Craigslist being a very big.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. I don't know what the percentage is, but maybe most of these trolls get hired through Craigslist.
Yeah.
Here's one.
It's like online classifieds.
Protesters needed, downtown civic vanness. Compensation, $15 an hour.
Craigslist email.
Another Craigslist. To whom it may concern, we will pay $15 an hour plus travel, including room and board, clothing, flags, signs, etc., for individuals willing to disrupt Trump rallies throughout the U.S. If interested, please leave your name and a contact number.
I'm sure some Antifa and Black Lives Matter people answered that call.
Okay, this one has a title on it, Stronger Together, Protesters Needed. Great Bay, CC. We're looking for people to protest racial injustice and anti-immigration at an upcoming rally in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We're looking for people who will hold signs and chant anti-conservative slogans for 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
Here's one. $1,500 a week. Stop Trump.
Yeah.
Hiring immediately. Call
All
today. $15 to $18 an hourly. Bonus. Overtime. Up to 77 hours per week. Drivers earn gas reimbursement. Morning and evening shifts. No experience needed.
Gotta be willing to drive across the country, though.
Right. This one, the title says, Actors Wanted. Knowledge of politics or skilled in fighting a plus. Actors needed to protest a political event this Saturday in Fountain Hills. Must be passionate about your assigned role to be able to follow directions. So there's your crisis actors.
Yes.
Right? If they're hiring actors for stuff like this.
Now look at the pay. The pay is up to, and then we know it's up to, so you can get like $500 depending on the level of actor you are, or if you are a fully resumed, experienced crisis actor, pay is up to $3,500 for 1 day of work.
Wow! And then this one down here, this is a quote on Twitter. ABC News: Donald Trump protester speaks out. I was paid $3,500 to protest Trump's rally. So those are some Craigslist ads.
Wow.
And just to show you how paid trolling can be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, along the lines of these ads, in the American 2016 elections, it was discovered that billionaire George Soros was funding hundreds of organizations aimed at social manipulation tactics. This is just the organizations based in America.
Yes.
He's got organizations all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Soros Networks reaches all over the world and has also connections with GCHQ.
Right.
Okay? So where's the funding coming from? We found the funding, right? This is where it's coming from.
Yes.
There's plenty of money provided by dark agendas to fund these tactics covertly and on a grand scale. And this might be something interesting to take a look at on your own. This is from discoverthenetworks.org. There is a list. It's like over 200 organizations, just in America alone, that are all funded by George Soros.
Wow.
And they're finding that if you that's a whole other topic to go down.
Yeah.
We won't do it here, but he has been manipulating politics.
Yes.
Political agendas, different countries warring against each other. He funds these things that manipulate people. So of course,
for like decades.
Yeah, for decades. He's got a really twisted background, Nazi related.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a big history on him. But here is this list, and they have a link to every single one of these institutes. But these are all of the different organizations.
Yeah, just
right? Starting with the Arab American Institute, Bill of Rights Defense. It goes down, and you'll see it just goes on forever. It's like hundreds and hundreds of organizations that are all funded by George Soros to basically stir up trouble and manipulate politics and people.
Yes.
So he's definitely got a hand in GCHQ as well when it comes to funding all of these covert online tactics.
Mm-hmm.
So, with all of that said, that is the conclusion of the first part of our presentation, showing you the GCHQ JTRIG slides. And stay tuned to the next part coming up soon, where we will be going through and giving you specific examples of all of these tactics that we've experienced personally as a learning lesson, so you can see how this stuff really plays out. So I hope that was helpful. Be sure to check out our book, Forbidden Tech. There'll be a link in the description below if you're interested in picking up a copy. We have it in book form. We have it in ebook, electronic book form. We've also made an audio book out of it if you want to listen to it in the car. And we created a full video course with modules that goes in depth with all these different topics that are in our book. So until next time, thanks so much for tuning in. Bye, everybody.
Bye.